A young teenage girl finds herself in an unfamiliar location. She stares blankly at a huge creature with giant fangs. 8 eyes and 10 legs with sharp ends. After a few seconds, she sweats intensely. She wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come out. As it finally sank in, her face turned into that of a terrified child. This explanation is about a game, or so it should have been. The game is a real-life strategic game in which 21 factions compete in a different world. Our protagonist faction is called Arachnea. The protagonist alias was Insect Sister. Strangely, she cannot remember the name of the game. It's been several years since the protagonist played the game. But she quickly forgets. All she knows is she lost consciousness and ended up here. She covers her mouth. Her body wouldn't stop shaking and her body felt numb. She wonder what the creature is, a spider, a scorpion. But never mind that, she has to run, but escape is futile. The creature made strange sounds with its fang. She believes she's going to be eaten. Screams run inside her head, but there's too many of them. The creature then says magnificent. This confused her, then they started hailing her as their queen. Her hair stood up in the back of her neck. The creature had talked, that's how it seemed. But it spoke to her directly, to her mind. A switch was flipped in her mind. She refers to the spiders as her children. The creepy-looking spiders are creatures from her faction, the Arachnea. Her dear units that she has observed in her screen for hundreds of hours. The spiders are referred to as the swarm. The one in front is a ripper swarm. The ones at the back his worker swarm, and the ones in the cave ceiling his called digger swarm. She's surprised she forgot such a simple thing. The Arachnea shouts the queen has returned. A load of questions filled her mind. Why is she here? Why can she hear their voices? The swarm ask for orders. Seeing that she's confused, explain they wanted a leader. The battle-worn leader who has ruled over them. The goddess of war who is drenched in red, who has brought them 1,000 of victories. They pled that she destroy the hardship and grant them billions of deaths. They stomp their feet praising her, asking for orders. She hesitates for a moment and yells, I am not your queen. The swarm became so silent that you could hear a pin drop. The creature in front of her says, no, your highness, you are our queen. Have you forgotten that you led us to victory many times? Suddenly she realized the obvious. The swarm have waited on crave for a queen. If she continues to deny she is the queen, what would happen to her? She may turn into prey. Suddenly she laughs. That's the only thing she can do in this situation. Or maybe she's become crazy. Nonetheless, something inside her is screaming survive. Even if it's a game, it's tempting not to disappoint the swarm, who she has fought with for years. She summons her resolve and take her first baby steps. She raises her hand, then announces as their queen she will lead them to victory. The cheers of the swarm fill her mind. At this moment she wonders, did she already become one of the bugs, or is she still human? She doesn't know, or even the reason why she came to that world. So she chose the path of battle. As a result, she became the worst slaughter in history. She absorbed the swarm collective consciousness. Before she forgets everything, she keeps a record in a writing device she discovered on one of her explorations. She is 18, born and raised in Japan. She didn't have many friends in real life, but plenty online. She's live a empty life, but has no lingering feels about it. However, she plans on returning home after giving the bugs their victory. She believes returning home is more important than their victory, at least at the moment. Every day she fears she'll lose her free will. All the swarm members are different, but talk the same, because they form a collective consciousness center around the queen. The swarm sync their minds and sync with the queen. She can feel their consciousness flowing into her. She decides to stop thinking about it now. It won't benefit her in any way. She tries to think of a plan of action. However, all she sees is unfamiliar cave with vast forest ahead. She finds it strange that she doesn't recognize the map. Since she knows all maps in the game, Furthermore, normally she would have started out with a few units. But there are already hundreds of them, there's no way she could be blessed with such a state. She ponders if there was a player before her. Well, whatever, it's more important to find out if other players have also found themselves in the same predicament. They could talk and find a way out together. That would be the case if she wasn't a Arachnea. Arachnea are known as savages. After all, diplomacy exists as a declaration of war because of them. She'll be careful of how she handles others. It's a pain to be hated. She scattered one unit from each Ripper swarm. They collect information and send it to her, visiting the collective consciousness, creating a three-dimensional map. A swarm informs her the clothing is complete. She poses in the dress and looked absolutely bewitching. A swarm informs her the worker swarm made the chair and bedding. They can make anything. She looks into the mirror and noticed she's become younger. She looks way younger than 18. It's like a fairy tale in the country of mirrors. A swarm calls her. She searches for the voice momentarily. Then realized the bug is contacting her. She's still not used to it. The bug informs her it's found a settlement. After that, similar to clicking a unit in the game. She can see the settlement. She noticed that the dwellers are elves, who have a hostile relationship with an evil faction like them in the game. The bug requests to be ordered to attack. Since it's elves, they should be easy prey. She orders it to wait. She needs to confirm if it's the world she's in as the game world. For example, in the forest, normally no player sets up a village without defense. But their village is defenseless. She calls for the Ripper swarm. She mounts the bug and thinks if she in a different world from the game, her strategies must also change. Meanwhile, two elves are running. The elf girl named Riza trips on a tree root and falls. The elf boy named Renato extends his hand to her, telling her to hurry. However, Riza is at her limit and says, "Go on without me." The brave elf won't abandon her, and says, "We're going home together." A slave merchant then shouts to his comrades he's found the goods. They seem to appear from thin air. The trader says, "Our game of tags has ended." Riza says, "Go, at this rate you'll also be a slave." Like any real man, he takes an arrow and shoots, saying he won't let anyone become a slave. With amazing precision and skill, he hits the tree, missing the slave trader. Renato knew this would cost him big time. The slave trader grabs the arrow and breaks it while making an ugly face that would make Lloyd proudish. Seeing this, Renato knew he was dead. The slave trade says, "Do what you want with the boy. Kill, boil, dissect. He's fine with the girl alone." The men smile gladly to fulfill such a horrible order. Renato screams and desperately tries to shoot them, but his aim is way off, causing the men to taunt him, saying, "Obviously he can't hit us." Renato falls over his own feet, and says while crying, "Only if I had more power." The Baldy raises his axe. Suddenly blood covered the ground. When Renato opened his eyes, he sees the lower body. Then noticed the bug having dinner. The slave trades panic. One of them is pierced through the gut. They scatter and are quickly disposed of. The leader of the slave trader is terrified by the sight of Arachnea. The queen says enough. They all stare at her. She looks at the blood-stained axe and thinks if she had left them alone, the children would have been killed. She hardened her heart, refusing to give sympathy to slave traders. Later on, the two arrive home. Renato's father immediately scolded him. They explained that they venture into the forest, but were attacked by slave traders, and were saved. They introduced the queen to them. They became terrified after seeing the giant bug next to her. The queen is surprised. It seems they've never seen a swarm before. The queen speaks confidently. The bug is my friend who has no intention of harming you. He makes noises with his fangs. She speaks to his mind and says the people are now trading partners. The bug apologized for being rude. A small old elf appeared. The surrounding elves refer to him as chief. The chief asked if she's a witch. She responds she is an Arachnea queen. no one knows what she's talking about. Not even the elder who has lived many years. She offers the village a deal. The elder cautiously asked if she's also a slave trader. She says she has no need for slaves. What I want, her stomach interrupts with a loud growl. She feels embarrassed and asks to be fed for the time being. After having a delicious meal, she inquires about meat. The elder says hunting season has ended, but they have dried meat. She needs fresh meat for the bugs and thought the village could assist them to procure it. Since this is the case, she goes with Plan B. She questions the elder about the frequency of the slave traded. The elder explains they've gotten more frequent in the few years. They have poachers, they killed sacred beast of the forest, and furthermore elf children are considered good products. If they're in the village they can protect them, but if they're outside it's a different story. Her eyes become hollow as she says, isn't it easier to get rid of them? The chief repeats her words thinking he heard wrong. By the look in his face it was obvious he wasn't a killer. But he finally understood what she meant by deal. He asked what she wants in return. She asked him to share a bit of their food from the village. That will be her portion, and regarding the destination of the corpses. She doesn't want him to ask about it, but it will be the children portion. Later on she visits her prey. The slave trader tried to be a tough guy, saying if she lays a hand on him, she won't get away with it. She kicks him in the face and says, "Shut up, you're too noisy." Suddenly the queen realized she wasn't always so ruthless. Slave trader are scum. But they aren't totally irrelevant to her. Also witnessing the horrific science, she shouldn't be able to eat. The queen asked if he ever heard of the word Arachnea. He asked if she's the organization's boss, seeing that the guy would be of no use. She turns to leave. The guy begs her to wait. He offers her slaves. He says he can give it to her for free. He got mountains of pretty boys just for her. He licks his lips and says, "Do you like pretty girls? I've got plenty of slaves that everyone wants." The queen looks at him with disdain and says, "I won't kill you." He thanks her. She then says they'll be starting phase 2 of Plan B. She calls the worker swarm and asks if the fertilization chamber is finished. They respond, "Right here, my queen." The slave trader asks, "What the hell are you?" His words end mid-sentence when he witnessed the fertilization chamber. The queen orders them to put the dry meat inside the furnace. After that a parasite swarm is produced and it enters the body of the slave trader. Afterwards the queen orders the threads to be cut. Then orders the man to stand. She orders him to say, "All hail the queen." It does just that. She then orders the ripper swarm to prepare for their journey.